The pharaoh was regarded as a living embodiment of the god Horus, giving him divine status that justified his absolute rule over Egypt. Because the people believed the king was a god on earth, they obeyed his commands without question, linking political authority directly to religion. As the chief priest of every Egyptian deity, the pharaoh performed the daily temple rituals that were thought to sustain the world's order. By offering food and incense to the gods, the king maintained ma'at, the balance of truth and justice essential for the nation's prosperity. The pharaoh held the title King of the Two Lands, symbolizing his dominion over both Upper and Lower Egypt. This dual title reinforced the idea that a single ruler unified the culturally distinct regions into one cohesive state. He served as the supreme military commander, personally leading armies in campaigns against Nubia, the Levant, and other rivals. Victories on the battlefield were celebrated in reliefs, reinforcing his reputation as a protector appointed by the gods. Pharaohs instituted the Sed Festival, a ritual renewal ceremony held after 30 years of reign to reaffirm their vigor and legitimacy. The elaborate celebration demonstrated to the populace that the king remained capable of governing and maintaining divine favor. The royal court was organized under a vizier who acted as the pharaoh's chief administrator and legal authority. By delegating daily governance to trusted officials, the king could focus on religious duties and monumental projects. Pharaohs controlled the redistribution of grain collected as tax, using it to feed the population during famine and to reward loyal officials. This economic power ensured the king's support among farmers and secured loyalty from the bureaucracy. They commissioned massive building projects, such as pyramids and temples, which served both as tombs and as demonstrations of state power. The monumental architecture showcased Egypt's wealth and the pharaoh's ability to marshal vast labor forces. The king's name was inscribed on all official documents, guaranteeing that decrees carried the weight of royal authority. By attaching his name to legal texts, the pharaoh made his will unmistakably binding throughout the kingdom. Pharaohs were believed to intercede with the gods on behalf of their subjects, petitioning for favorable floods and fertile lands. This mediator role made the king essential to agricultural success, tying his reign to the nation's survival. The royal titulary included 5 names, each reflecting a different aspect of kingship, such as the Neti name linking the king to the 2 ladies goddesses. These titles reinforced the pharaoh's multifaceted divine connections and legitimized his rule through tradition. He oversaw the construction of the royal mortuary cult, ensuring that priests performed rituals after his death to sustain his soul. Continued worship of the deceased king helped maintain his influence and protected the living dynasty's claim to power. Pharaohs negotiated international trade agreements, sending emissaries to the Levant and Nubia for luxury goods like cedar and gold. These diplomatic missions expanded Egypt's wealth and secured exotic materials needed for royal art and construction. The king's seal was used on diplomatic correspondence, guaranteeing that foreign rulers recognized his sovereignty. The distinctive imprint served as an early form of authentication, preventing forgery and asserting Egyptian prestige abroad. Pharaohs instituted the practice of coronation rituals that included the crowning of the white crown to symbolize mastery over Upper Egypt. The ceremonial placement of the crown publicly displayed the king's rightful claim to the region's political authority. They appointed nomarchs, regional governors who administered provinces but reported directly to the royal court. This hierarchical system allowed the pharaoh to exercise control over distant territories while delegating local governance. The king's decrees could alter the legal code, such as modifying penalties for theft or adjusting property rights. By shaping law, the pharaoh could respond to social changes and reinforce his image as a just ruler. Pharaohs were depicted in art with the uraeus, a rearing cobra, signifying divine protection and royal authority. The visual symbol reminded viewers that the king was guarded by the goddess Wajet, reinforcing his sacred status. They commissioned statues that were placed in temples, where priests performed rituals as if the king were present. These statues acted as focal points for worship, allowing the pharaoh's presence to continue influencing religious life. The royal family's marriage alliances, often within the dynasty, were used to preserve the purity of the bloodline. By marrying close relatives, the pharaoh minimized external claims to the throne and reinforced dynastic continuity. Pharaohs regulated the production of papyrus, ensuring that scribes could record administrative and religious texts. Control over this essential writing material helped maintain bureaucratic efficiency and the dissemination of royal propaganda. They oversaw the weighing of the heart ceremony in the afterlife, believing their own moral conduct set an example for the dead. By embodying Ma'at, the king demonstrated the ideal behavior expected of all Egyptians in both life and death. The king's birthday and coronation anniversaries were celebrated with festivals that included feasting and public games. These communal events reinforced loyalty to the monarch and provided opportunities for the state to display generosity. Pharaohs dictated the official calendar, aligning it with the heliacal rising of Sirius to predict the annual Nile flood. By controlling timekeeping, the ruler could plan agricultural cycles and religious festivals, further entwining his authority with nature. They commissioned royal decrees carved into stone stelae, which were placed in public spaces for all to read. Public inscriptions ensured that the king's policies were widely known, reducing misunderstandings and asserting transparency. The pharaoh's personal treasury funded the construction of obelisks that marked important religious sites. These towering monuments served both as offerings to the sun god Ra and as visible markers of the king's piety. Pharaohs established state workshops where skilled artisans produced jewelry, weapons, and ceremonial objects for the court. Centralized production allowed the king to control quality, maintain elite standards, and showcase Egypt's artistic excellence. They instituted tribute missions, where conquered peoples brought gifts to the Egyptian capital, demonstrating submission. These processions displayed the empire's reach and reinforced the pharaoh's role as the ultimate authority over foreign lands. The king's personal guard, known as the Royal Hekau, protected him and symbolized his elite status. The presence of a specially trained protective unit highlighted the sacredness of the monarch and deterred potential threats. Pharaohs practiced royal titulary that linked them to previous illustrious kings, such as Son of Ra, to claim continuity. By aligning themselves with legendary ancestors, they bolstered their legitimacy and invoked the prestige of past golden ages. They authorized the creation of funerary texts, like the Book of the Dead, guiding the deceased king through the afterlife. These magical spells ensured the pharaoh's safe passage to the afterworld, reflecting his unique status beyond death. The king oversaw the allocation of labor for seasonal agricultural work, organizing corvée service during the inundation. By directing communal labor, the pharaoh maximized crop yields and demonstrated his role as the provider of sustenance. Pharaohs commissioned royal autobiographies on tomb walls, recounting achievements to inspire future generations. These narrative inscriptions served as propaganda, cementing the king's legacy and reinforcing state ideology. They instituted a system of royal patronage that funded temples, ensuring priests remained loyal and financially dependent on the crown. By supporting religious institutions, the king secured a network of influential allies who reinforced his divine legitimacy. The pharaoh's coronation involved a smiting of enemies motif, depicting him striking down foes with a mace. This powerful image communicated the king's role as a protector and enforcer of order, deterring internal dissent. They regulated the production of fine linen, a luxury commodity reserved for the royal household and high officials. Controlling this textile reinforced social hierarchy and allowed the king to display wealth through sumptuous clothing. Pharaohs maintained a royal archive of administrative records, preserving details of tax collection, land ownership, and legal cases. This bureaucratic memory enabled consistent governance across reigns and provided a basis for historical continuity. They appointed high priests to major cult centers like Thebes, granting them authority while keeping them answerable to the throne. By integrating religious leaders into the state hierarchy, the pharaoh ensured that temple wealth and influence served royal interests. The king's official seal featured the Ankh symbol, representing life and his role as the guarantor of Egypt's longevity. The Ankh's presence on documents signaled that the king's endorsement conferred vitality and durability to the decree. Pharaohs organized state-sponsored games such as chariot races, which both entertained the populace and displayed military prowess. These spectacles reinforced the image of a powerful ruler capable of fielding elite troops and provided a unifying cultural experience. They instituted royal decrees that standardized weights and measures, facilitating trade and taxation across the empire. Uniform standards reduced fraud, increased efficiency, and strengthened the central authority's control over economic activity. The king's personal emblem, the double crown, combined the white hedget and red deshret, signifying rule over both lands. Wearing the combined crown publicly declared the pharaoh's comprehensive sovereignty and political unity. Pharaohs oversaw the cult of the deceased king, ensuring that mortuary priests performed nightly offerings. Continuous worship after death was believed to sustain the king's spirit, thereby protecting the living dynasty's legitimacy. They granted royal privileges to certain cities, such as tax exemptions, to secure loyalty and strategic alliances. These incentives fostered economic development in key regions, while reinforcing the monarch's role as a benefactor. The king's court maintained a royal library where religious and scientific texts were copied and studied. Access to knowledge allowed the pharaoh to patronize scholars, enhancing Egypt's intellectual prestige and administrative competence. Pharaohs used prophetic oracles from the goddess Hathor to justify political decisions and military campaigns. Claiming divine endorsement through oracles helped the king legitimize controversial actions and rally public support. They regulated the state monopoly on gold mining in Nubia, controlling the flow of precious metal into the economy. By monopolizing gold, the pharaoh could fund monumental projects and maintain a stable currency system. The king's image was minted on royal seals, used on pottery and jewelry, marking objects as belonging to the household of the king. These marks signified elite status and allowed the monarch to track the distribution of luxury goods. Pharaohs commissioned tribute statues from vassal states, displaying them in Egyptian temples as proof of subjugation. Displaying foreign statues reinforced the perception of Egypt's dominance and the king's role as an imperial ruler. They instituted the annual Sed festival later in life, renewing their claim to power after decades of rule and reaffirming divine favor. This renewal ceremony reminded subjects that the king remained vigorous and still possessed the god's endorsement for continued governance.